All right. We have two new novices with us today. As we know, yesterday they made their entrance into the novitiate. Sue Gregory made her renewal of vows, and today is Sue Gregory's birthday. So all you Zoomers around the country, I'm going to break tradition and let you know that she is 80 years old today. So anyway, we've got people from Texas, California, Canada, Michigan, Virginia, other places that I have failed. Oh, Dave Swanser's joining us here from Ohio. He's right down the road from us. If you can get your prayers of the Holy Family Institute, that little small booklet. If you don't have it, there's some over on the table. For those who are Zoomers, this is a new book that we have printed, and you will get a copy of this after the Triduum. I will send you a copy of the new statute, a new booklet, and some calendars that we have gotten every so often. The new statute looks the same as others, except it's a light blue color, still has a nice wire bound, can be held open for you. Okay, we're going to give to our second talk. We're continuing our reflection on Complete My Joy, which was written by Bishop Olmsted from the Bishop of Phoenix. Again, for those of you who are joining us today, especially our Zoomers, you can find this online by typing in Complete My Joy. You can find the PDF version, which you can print out, or you can download it to your tablet, or smartphone, or whatever, especially if you have the Adobe app, which is what I have on my tablet, and you can have that messenger. He also produced a book called Into the Breach, which was specifically to talk to fathers and to men about their spirituality. This preceded this one, which is addressed to mothers and fathers and families as well. So you might want to find that. You can also find that online as well. For Into the Breach, for those of you who are Knights of Columbus, you can go on their website, and they have a number of videos that I think there's 10 of them that reflect upon Into the Breach. So you might want to look at that. But we're going to continue on Complete My Joy. Yesterday we were talking about the gift of children to parents. And so the bishop says that you, moms and dads, have the God-given gift and responsibility of exercising in service, authority in service and in your children. You have the responsibility of caring for your children. You are to love them. You are to discipline them. You are to guide them. You are to train them. You are to exercise your authority in the protection of your children, especially in their early ages, in their early lives. And you must take your your children take their first and most important cues from what you say and how you are wise or how you are foolish, whether you are worthy or unworthy. They are the ones that are following what you are doing, what you are saying. And sometimes we're not aware of what we're doing. I've heard stories of all of a sudden a child will say something, everybody's shocked, and they say, well, that's what mom and dad say. And all of a sudden you didn't realize you were saying that, because now they're just mirroring back what you were doing. So we have the responsibility of caring for them. The Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches the parents have the first responsibility for the education of their children. You are to create a home where there is tenderness, forgiveness, respect, fidelity, love that is there. You are to educate them. You are to teach them. Even though later on you may ask teachers and others to be guidance for them, it is still up to you to maintain control. So even if they are going to school, many parents have asked, my parents, when I was growing up, what did you learn in school today? Nothing. That's not true. You learned something today, so you have it in there. And so it's taking an interest in what they are doing. I know my parents used to come in and try to help me with my homework, and then I was, quote, in the new math, and they were in the old math. Now my new math is the old math, and something else is coming on, and there's a lot of different technologies and things that are happening. But to know what they're doing, what they're paying attention, guiding them in many ways. What are they watching on the internet? How do you restrict their access to the things that they're doing, especially now with the pandemic? A lot of things are being done through schools. And so there's a responsibility. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are you following up? Are you maintaining? Are you going to parent-teacher association meetings and finding out how your children are doing and what issues might be going on? So again, we as parents, you have the responsibility of caring for your children. And you are teachers because you are parents. And even if you delegate to others, you still have to remain part of that. Also, we realize that no matter what challenges you face in your family, in living God's plan, the Lord has more grace in store for you than you can imagine. So the Lord is there with you as parents. In the third section of this document, Complete My Joy, he talks about the mission of every Christian family. He says the family has the mission to guard, reveal, and communicate love. The love of the Trinity and Christ's love for the church. So again, we talked about love earlier, the family, the husband and wife together showing the connection with the Trinity. And so again, you show that love is that. St. John Paul II, in one of his documents, did not say the family do what you are, or family strive to make yourself a family. Rather, he said, family become what you are. You allow your nature as a communion of love to grow, develop, mature, and overflow. You are living and you rely upon the Lord to help give you guidance in many ways. And this mission given to you is a mission that you have to accept. And you must personally say, I'm going to take on the responsibility of sharing this love, witnessing to my children, witnessing to the people that make up my family. G.K. Chesterton has that great statement that we all are familiar with. It is not that Christianity has been tried and found lacking. It has been found difficult and left untried. So it may be difficult to be parents. You know that better than myself. But it's centered on Jesus Christ. You need to have Jesus Christ to be a part of your life. He says, I want you to remember the angel's message to Mary, whose unique mission in history likely sounded impossible when she heard it, but it, quote, nothing will be impossible for God, or in the more positive, all things are possible with God. When I became provincial on my third term, second time around in 2012, I had read something in the Agenda Paulina, and the Agenda Paulina, for all of us know, it's also the word of the voice of the founder, which you get along with the Concord. You can find the Agenda Paulina on alberione.org, and you can download it from there, again, as a PDF on your phone or iPad or tablet or whatever. The new version will be coming out soon. They usually are doing it at the end of the year. It'll be ready for next year. But anyway, I had read some things there, and I had heard some other things that all said all things are possible with God. So that became the theme of my next term as provincial, is all things are possible. So when you outline the things that are going to be done. So when you look at your life as parents, and you might say, I'm going to run into some difficulties, just remember, as Mary is told, all things are possible for God. Also, as spouses, year by year, you come to him in your own personal prayer, in the Mass, in the sacraments. in your relationships with one another. As you come to pray, you can call upon the Lord. And he says, well, why don't you say this prayer? Teach me and guide me in the way you want me to love my spouse and my family. He says, not in a general way, but specifically. How does God want you specifically in your place, in your role, and in the family that he has given you, on how you are to relate and to share? So you call upon him. Part of that is that the bishop says you are to have a blessings in your chaste life, and you take the vow of chastity in the Holy Family Institute. And he says a healthy marriage is impossible without marital chastity. He says chastity in marriage, he says, does not mean celibacy. That's what I take, celibacy. I'm celibate. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have children. I'm not going to have a family. Now, you may be celibate at some time, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we're talking about chaste and chastity. He says chastity in marriage means self-control and sexuality, a freedom to steer one's sexual desires and actions lovingly, so that in sex you will the good of each other. You have concern for the other person. You're reaching out to the other person. So he says when you're looking at the sexuality that you have in your relationship, he says we have to refuse to allow pornography and contraception or any fantasy mentality to turn the act of sexuality into an experience of using each other as an object. You're approaching each other as human beings, a loving partner that you have. And we know that pornography is very prevalent in our society and in our world, especially for us men, more than for women. And I think he addresses that into The Breach. Again, his other document on men's spirituality, and to husbands and fathers, he deals a little bit of that issue. So he says you need to learn to grow in your sexual relationship and how you communicate with each other, frankly, patiently, readily. Be quick to forgive. Spend time, good time together, cultivating the garden of all areas of your intimacy, your verbal communication, your care for each other's needs, of your affection, and the need for your time to be together. Again, we used that image yesterday, the garden. We're going to nurture it. We're not going to make it a jungle where it's messy and it's all burdened with a lot of other things. And so we want to have that in there. So he says chastity grows by God's grace in renewed effort towards self-mastery and freedom. And this self-mastery is a long and exacting work. So there may be times where you need the help of the sacraments. You grow in your prayer together and you're talking with one another. So again, there may be times when you're talking about having a family and doing the things that are necessary, that you may choose that you're going to be celibate for a given time. You talk about natural family planning, which he all talks about in the next, is that we need to be open to new life. The Lord, in the theology of the body, is very much talks about the issue of couples being open to the children that God has given them. And so you need to look at those various aspects. So he says, once you got through the sexual revolution back in the 60s and maybe 70s, it talked about sexual pleasure separate from procreation, outside of marriage. You talked about divorce coming in, abortion, the youth not having hope that love can be faithful and beautiful. The elderly are separated from children who could care for them and look out after them. And he encourages us to read about Humanae Vitae from the document 1968, I believe from Pope Paul VI, because it talks about prophetically upholding the dignity of husband, wife, and child in accord with God's loving designs. And so everybody got caught up in he talking about the aspects of contraception and sort of missed the rest of the document, which talked about the love that husbands and wives are to have and for their children. So you might want to read that document as well. And so you are to call to have great hearts here, be countercultural in many ways, and talking about open up to new life. And so as he looks at the various aspects, he says, Do not refuse the gift of a new child into your home, into God's family, into the history of the world. Your own heart will grow in virtue and in the capacity for love, which is the real meaning of your life. So if you welcome that child, then you're expanding that sense of love. You're part of the creative process that God brings into our life. And so you want to be open to that presence. He says then, as we mentioned, periodic abstinence from the marital act does not mean periodic abstinence from love. It just means you're stopping of the sexual act for whatever reasons. But you're still not eliminating love. He says abstinence is an opportunity to learn love in each other in a myriad of other ways. In fact, respecting the God-designed cycle of fertility reliably strengthening the marital relationships with one another. There was a book from written by Christopher West, who's from the Theology of the Body Institute, called Good News About Sex and Marriage. It's a good book to read. It presents a lot of questions that people might ask, and then you say, okay, this is going to be the answer of how you can respond to that. And looking at some of the videos that came from the Theology of the Body Institute earlier this year, there were several people who talked about reading that book and changed their life, changed their whole focus, because it focuses on the love that the husband and wife are to have with one another. He also looks at the issue of trusting God in all things, including his care for the needs of your family and each child that blesses your home with his or her arrival. And that's the heart of your family's mission. Again, we're talking about the mission, you being open to the gift of life, and you want to welcome whatever children are brought into your family. We also talk about the need for a mission, both the feminine and the masculine, the husband and the wife, the mother and the father, the need for both of those aspects to be a part of the family and completing the joy. And so he says, first of all, that the mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you, from the prophet Isaiah. So the mother is the one who primarily has the main focus of caring for her children. And so we need to know and reach out to others who can help us and guide us in many ways. And the bishop calls us to reflect upon many women saints who reflected upon their role as husband and wives, or focusing on the women, excuse me. He quotes St. Teresa of Benedicta, says, women naturally seek to embrace that which is living, personal, and whole, to cherish, to guard, to protect, nourish, and advance growth in her natural maternal yearning. And so he says, by the presence of these uniquely feminine gifts of nurturing and relationality, a woman can be the spiritual mother even if she does not have children of her own. But first of all, she is the nurturing, is carried, sort of the instincts of being female is that nurturing aspect of reaching out and caring for others. And you can talk about spiritual mothers, even though they may not have children of themselves. And again, I mentioned yesterday how I value the women in our Pauline family, whether they are the Annunciationists, whether they are the Holy Family members, whether they are in their sister congregations, that add that feminine quality to those of us men in the Pauline family, and to give us a witness and to care for us. Now, some of them are married, some of them are consecrated women, some of them are consecrated religious living in community. So all these women who are part of the Pauline family, and as you know of the 10 branches, there are more women branches than there are men branches in the Pauline family. Recent psychological research indicates that the mother alone has the power to truly comfort and stabilize a child, especially during the first year of a child's life. And so he challenges mothers to be there when their child in their early years. And he even challenges them at times, perhaps leaving the workplace so that you can focus on being a child. And we know that's a challenge perhaps in today's society. But he says, be at home while your children are young, and where possible, put other work off during this time of necessary imbalance, when your children need most to absorb your motherly presence and the unconditional love you more naturally provide. He says this is a time that goes so quickly and once gone cannot be recaptured. Never doubt that there is no greater job, quote, in all the world than to be the first to form and nurture the mind, heart, and soul of your child. So to be there, to not necessarily give it off to someone else, but to be there and to guide your child. Then he also goes and talks about the father's mission in the family. Says, husbands and fathers, you too have an irreplaceable mission. There is a security and stability that only you can give your family, and this will only bless your family to the extent that you fulfill your role as provider, protector, and spiritual leader. You have a responsibility there in many ways. And for many fathers, many husbands, you're going to be, perhaps in some cases, the main provider, the nurturer. You're going to be the one out there working to provide the needs for your children. So he says, as the lead, if not the sole provider of the income, you need to sustain the family. You shoulder a burden that frees your wife to be present to you and to your children, particularly when your children are young. So in all of this, they say, trust in God, seek good friendships of men who can come alongside you and take necessary steps to provide, even if outside your normal field for a time. He says, I am praying for you. So we pray for our fathers. Fathers need to get together and talk about the issues, talk about the concerns. One of the things we try to do in the Knights of Columbus is to talk about the spirituality and to support our men as fathers and as husbands in the things that they are called to do. And so the father has a mission as well in order to nurture and to care and to assist his wife in caring for their children. So all of you are called to do that. There are also various threats that take on various forms to this coming together. He says, a special note at this time in history, the threat of overuse of technology and the always evil problem of pornography comes to mind. So do what you must to protect the precious time, peace, unity, and health imaginations of your family. So again, modern technology can separate us from the family. You let your television, you let the videos, you let the gaming things become the babysitter, so to speak, when really we can provide things of sitting down or reading Bible stories as we provide with our stores and provide things that can help. So there's a way of looking at it. Again, pornography can take away from your relationship as well. He says, other threats known better to you than to me are your responsibilities along with positive encouragement towards new healthy experiences, challenging opportunities of charity, of service and work, and even encouraging risks for personal growth. And all this is deeply impacted, especially as fathers. You know that there are challenges, there are things that are going to threaten the family and threaten the fatherhood. And so we need to support our fathers as best we can. You're steadfast, again, talking to parents, but especially for fathers, your steadfastness or steadiness in maintaining the grace of weekly mass and the sacraments. Your growth in disciplined prayer and your pursuit of deeper personal conversion throughout your life provide for an indelible lesson in spiritual leadership. So go to Mass, bring your children, show them prayer, show them important. I remember getting my first rosary from my father was a brown rosary. Now, at that time, most rosaries that men had were black. And I remember him going on retreats every year with the men's club of our parish. And sometimes we would go as the family and pick him up on a Sunday afternoon after he had the weekend over at a nearby monastery down in Kentucky. And I know one time he came back and brought that rosary, and I really cherished that rosary because it was that different color. It was always the black rosary that we got, so for him to give a brown one. And in fact, I think I still have it somewhere. I got so many rosaries, I don't know. But again, coming to Mass, being there, whether it's in here or later, I remember when we went to Mass and growing up, it was the whole Roerich family coming together. And we all sat in the same place. So it was so we went in the pew, it was Diana, and then my mom, and then Sharon, then Susan, then my dad, and then me. I was on the end. Of course, I was next to my dad, so he could keep an eye on me. And then when my brother came, then he sat on the other side of my dad. And then as we got older, then we began to spread out a little bit more. My dad liked the early morning Mass. Most of us liked the midday Mass. And one of my sisters just couldn't get up and get going, so she went to like the noon Mass at the parish. And but we would all go together, and it was very important. We prayed the family rosary together. And I remember friends of mine coming to knock on the back door and asking me to come out and play. And I said, no, I can't, because we're praying the rosary together. And so that was very important to us. We need to instill that in many ways. St. Paul tells fathers not to provoke their children, but to bring them up with the training and instruction of the Lord. So when you as fathers affirm your sons in word and deed and time together, you are giving the authoritative pronouncement of their goodness so that they can live confidently as beloved sons. When your daughter is affirmed as good, beautiful, and precious by you, the most important man in her life, she will be confident and well equipped to say no to the false flattery of the world that so often fails to see her true dignity, value, and worth. So support your children, support your sons, support your daughters, which I'm sure all of you are doing. I'm just reinforcing that for you in your own lives. And now for many of us, it's your children and your grandchildren, supporting them and encourage them as well. As a domestic church, you are to continue to grow, educating your children powerfully. This begins when families introduce their young children to Jesus and the Eucharist. And again, I want to encourage to bring your children to Mass. And I don't know if he's quoting somebody, but he says, if the church is not crying, it is dying. In other words, I don't mind crying children during Mass. And I tell the story of a friend of mine who lives here in Ohio. I went to school with the mother, got to know the family, and they have 4 daughters now, all of them in their 30s and 40s at this point. And I remember they would say they came a few times to St. Paul Monastery. And they would say, well, they were alternating, that one would stay home with the girls and the other would come. And I said, oh, I don't mind, bring the girls. So one day I was preaching, and right in the middle of the Mass and the preaching, this big loud cry goes, and I look back there, and there's my friend holding his daughter and just smiling like, you're the one that said, bring the baby, And so again, like I said, the church is not crying, it is dying. So we love to hear those voices, and that's part of life and part of the things going. The other story I tell is my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. We actually had the Mass in a local hotel. So we had a reception area. So we had the Mass, and then immediately went right to the reception. So it was at the end of communion, and there was a little pause, and then I got up and said, let us pray. And my cousin's son said, I thought that's what we were already doing. I said, yes, and we're going to do some more. So now he's about 30 years of age as well. So as children get older, it's important for parents to consider the best way to intentionally bring them up in the faith so that they take part in the mission of the church. Of course, to take part in this mission, your children must first have known and experienced that love themselves. So teach them the love, teach them about the faith. If They're going to Catholic schools, then find out what's being taught, what is being said, and participate. If they're in CCD programs, find out what they're learning, what they're experiencing, or perhaps even become part of the CCD program process to make sure that people are learning about their faith is important for them, so that we strengthen them, because they may go through that period of time where they're going to reject their faith. They're going to not listen to the things that are going on. They're going to rebel, and then they may come back later. But we need to make sure that they learn about their faith. So this will happen by way of prayer, liturgy, the sacraments, catechesis, retreats, and family customs. Again, do we pray the rosary together? Do we go out together? Again, and I think it was in this document here that he talks about growing up. Sundays, everything was closed. And so Sundays was a day that we would go out as a family. We'd hop in a car and drive somewhere, even if it's just to walk in a park or be out together. But it was always something that we were doing. We weren't watching our football games, and we weren't going shopping because nothing was open, maybe a drugstore or something of that nature. But most stores were not open at that time. So here he offers several considerations for parents to take up in prayer. First, how your children will understand the faith. Second, how they will experience God's love. And third, how they will see the faith in the witness of others. So how will they come to understand the faith? How we can teach them and guide them. And again, understand what's out there. Make sure that things are being understood and taught well. How will they experience God's love? We have love for one another. And then how is it witnessed in relationships with others, and how it extends beyond the family. Our faith also entails an encounter. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI said, being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a lofty idea, but the encounter with an event, a person, which gives life a new horizon and a decisive direction. So how have you encountered Jesus? Are your children convinced that they have encountered Jesus Christ personally? Do they know the Holy Spirit's voice of peace in them in such a way that they can be led by the Holy Spirit? When your children encounter God's love in a true way, they will be able to own their Catholic faith in a more profound way. They will be proud of their Catholic faith. And this happens first and foremost in your family, as you are attentive to God's presence and as you are faithful to prayer, the sacraments. In addition to various youth retreats and school activities that give young people Christian experiences that can play a vital role in ensuring their young people have the encounter with Christ and to be his disciple. I went to the great University, Moorhead State University in Moorhead, Kentucky. Shout out to the Fighting Eagles of Moorhead. And they had a Newman Center that was very active, and we had retreats, and that's where I spent a lot of my time when I was at the university, and that's where I got to know many of the friends that I still have. And it was great because we had prayer times. We had, at those times, quote, the infamous in the 1970s, the dialogue mass. So that was where the priest would present a topic matter, and then we all had a chance to, quote, dialogue about what we were experiencing about those things that were going on. And it was a nice experience to share what was happening and what was going on there. So to have the retreats and to do those things that are going on. And finally, quite often, the faith of a young person is invited to greater depth by the example of others. How do we witness? How do we call? And how do we challenge? There's a few other issues that the bishop wants to address. First of all, he says we pray for those parents whose children have strayed. They have left the faith. And he calls upon St. Monica. So the bishop wrote to St. Monica and said, it's not possible that the son of these tears should perish. And St. Ambrose told St. Monica, supposedly, speak less to Augustine about God and more to God about Augustine. So maybe it's go to God and pray for your children who have strayed, who have wandered from the faith, that they will come to know about the faith. And as I said yesterday, you maintain the witness. We're going to pray before and after meals. We're going to pray when we get traveling in the car. We're going to make sure when our grandchildren or children come with us, we're going to Mass. And you're going to come with us because you're in our home. And so especially with grandchildren, maybe their parents don't go to Mass, maybe they don't go to Mass, but there's the opportunity. Now, I tell the story of my niece who is now 30-something years of age. Just got married last year, and she's thankful that she got married last year instead of planning it for this year, and something would have happened. So anyway, for many years she would be going to Mass with my mother. Now, her father's Lutheran, but really wasn't active in the church. And so there was one time where she was forced really to get dressed to go to Mass. And we were going on a Saturday afternoon. And so she was turning to me and she said, Uncle Matt, I don't know why I have to get all dressed up and Mom's making me. And I said, well, you're really talking to the wrong person here, because I think we need to get somewhat dressed up when we're coming to Mass. Well, then the guy that came out and was the leader of song, it was the parish picnic weekend. He was there in his tank top and his shorts with his hairy underarms and leading the singing. And she was going, well, see, look at him. And I said, I would have said, at least put on your choir robe, or at least put on a decent shirt and pair of pants to lead, and then you can change when you want to get out. Now, I've also been here for many years. We had people that would come out to the lake. And they say, well, where do I go for Mass? And they would show up at St. Paul Monastery. Now, during the summer, some of them would wear their halter tops and their tank tops and their flip-flops, and people were complaining. And I said, well, as long as they're not wearing their bikinis, as long as they're not wearing their swim trunks, I'm glad to see them. I said, I didn't criticize that much, even though, yes, it would have been nice, but they're on vacation, and I understand that. I'm just glad they took the time to say, hey, I want to find out where the local place is to go do that. But again, there's the sense of leading and responding and whatever the case may be. And so I think my niece still continues to go to Mass because she was taught by my sister, her mother, and was able to do that. And I hope she will continue on if she is blessed with any children. We also know that our family's mission extends beyond not only the children that are straying, but it goes into extended family members. So the elder members of our families occupy a crucial place. As Pope Francis reminds us, grandparents have a capacity to understand the most difficult situations, a great ability, and when they pray for these situations, their prayer is strong, it is powerful. We can go to our parents who become the grandparents for our children because they raised us. They know a little bit about children, but also they have a great capacity for leading and guiding into. My sister once told me the greatest relationship is the grandmother and the grandson, mainly because they think the grandson's going to carry on the family name, which is what my grandmother, who was a nice Southern Baptist woman, didn't understand anything about me being a Catholic priest, because she said, okay, we're not going to have any grandchildren here. And I said, nope, that's not in the plan here. So didn't quite, she kept praying for me all the time. And I have a nice picture of her when I did my first Mass in my home parish. I have my fellow Pauline priest and the priests that were there from the parish that I knew, and my grandmother. And I said that was great because she was, again, that nice Southern Baptist woman who married twice. My one father died early, and then she married the second time, and both of her husbands were Catholic. And so she was more Catholic than a lot of Catholics that I know. And so it was very good. Then after you have your older generation, you can have your aunts and your uncles. They'll always say, I have two great aunts, my grandmother's sisters who were Ursuline sisters, so they were very instrumental in forming us as well. So you have those, and then you also have neighbors, family, friends. single, lonely people can all be served as the family exercises the badly need a gift of hospitality and witnesses, reaching out and making the people around us a family, inviting others to be part of the family, especially those who might be lonely, those who have no one to invite them to be a part of who we are. And so in this way, we sort of extend the family, the setting of our home to charity and respect for those gathered around us. Hospitality is very much a part of the domestic church, and it should be a part of ourselves as the domestic church, as the family, that we reach out and welcome others. I know I witnessed in my life, all my friends who were always welcomed by my mom and dad. If they were there for a meal or to join us for different things. And I have a friend of mine who sort of invited himself all the time to our family gatherings because unfortunately he didn't have a great family relationship and very dysfunctional. He said he always admired our family because we were doing things. We were celebrating and coming together, even if it was Easter and Christmas and birthdays and anniversaries and going out and doing things. He didn't have any of that in his family, so he always enjoyed being a part of our family. And so we welcomed him for many times to be with us and hope that we made an impact in his life. And finally, we are to be disciples of Christ, precisely as married couples, living the truth of the domestic church. You are called to become apostles to other families within your parish or in the key areas of evangelization. So in other words, you become a witness of those whom you come to know in the church and as the families come in. And I reflect upon the parish I grew up in. There was a great change in movement within the church, because the parish, when I was growing up, all the neighborhoods around were kids everywhere and families. Well, then of course we all got older and we all left. And so it was our parents who didn't have children. So then it became an older parish, and then it was less children in there. Well, then all of a sudden my parents and others began to move out and families were moving back in. So they went through that transition. They went from lots of kids to very little kids to back to having kids again in the parish. And so it was wonderful to see those things. And so we can have a responsibility of caring for others in many ways. The bishop says, I urge you to greater involvement in the marriage and family apostolate, which takes many forms. It is the natural course in the church that disciples are called to be apostles. So be involved. Many people might be involved in a marriage encounter or engagement encounter, or now that you're involved in the Holy Family Institute, it's an opportunity to reach out and tell people about the Institute and how wonderful it is and what you've gotten out of it and what you've experienced, and be able to invite others. And that's how we have the lifeblood. Again, as I said, we have 11 new Pashtuns and maybe more, and some of them are children of members. And so now that their children have gotten older and have gotten married, now they saw how important it was for their family or their moms and dads who were part of the Holy Family. They are now coming, so we're getting that next generation. And so it's very wonderful to see. It is the natural course in the church, again, disciples will be called apostles. Your marriage and family are strong in this time for a reason, and that reason may be to help others on that path to holiness as missionaries to other couples and families. And so part of that mission may be to reach out to others and be a witness and to challenge and to show them in many ways. So I'm going to conclude this talk here this morning. And we're going to take a little break for our Zoomers. Just a reminder, our schedule here is we're going to leave you. We're going to leave the Zoom on, but we're going to leave you. And we're going to go up and have Mass at 11 o'clock, so in about 15 minutes, so you can work your way upstairs. During the Mass this morning, we're going to have the couples that are here today. We're going to have the renewal of the exchange of your marriage vows, and you can find that particular reflection in your Holy Family Institute booklet. Under the Institute ceremonies, there is what you say to one another. So you Zoomers, if you're at home with your spouse, if you have the Holy Family Institute booklet, you can find that and exchange your vows. What page? 80, page 80. So you can go on 80, and we'll do that this morning after the homily. And then we will be back here at 1:30 this afternoon for our next conference. We'll be back here at 12, so you Zoomers may find us eating here at 12 o'clock. We're going to take a little break. So again, we're going to go for Mass, so we'll see you guys later. And our next conference is at 1:30, and we'll see you all then. Take care and God bless.